How World War I started and ended. World War I started in 1914, being triggered by the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary by a Serbian nationalist named Gavrilo Princip. He belonged to a group called the Black Hand, which aimed to create a greater Serbia, free from Austro-Hungarian rule. The assassination was the trigger for Austria-Hungary to declare war on Serbia on July 28, 1914. This set off a chain reaction of events, with various alliances that had been formed between countries before the war causing them to join in on one side or the other. The alliances included the Allies, Great Britain, France, and Russia, and the Central Powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire, and as the war escalated, more countries joined in, ultimately leading to a global conflict that lasted for 4 years and claimed millions of lives. World War I was a complex and multifaceted conflict that lasted from 1914 to 1918. However, it can be broadly categorized into several chapters, based on major events and turning points during the war. Number 1. On August 4, 1914, the great powers of Europe went to war with each other, marking the beginning of the First World War. Number 2. Stalemate in the trenches, with both sides digging in and unable to make significant gains. The second chapter of World War I is marked by the brutal and protracted trench warfare that took place in France and Belgium. Conditions in the trenches were terrible, and the fighting was often characterized by massive casualties for both sides. Number 3. Turning point battles. The third chapter of the war saw a series of turning point battles, where one side gained a decisive advantage over the other. These battles included the Battle of the Marne, which ended the Schlieffen Plan and turned the tide against Germany, the Battle of Jutland, the largest naval battle of the war, and the Battle of Verdun, which saw some of the bloodiest fighting of the war. Number 4. Total War and U.S. entry. The fourth chapter saw the war expand to a global conflict, as the great powers used all their resources and technology to try and gain an advantage over their enemies. It was during this chapter of the war that the United States entered the conflict, turning the tide in favor of the Allies. Number 5. Collapse of the Central Powers. The final chapter of World War I saw a series of decisive victories by the Allied powers, leading to the collapse of the Central Powers. This chapter includes the 100 Days Offensive, which saw the Allies push the Germans back across the Western Front, and the Armistice of November 11, 1918, which ended the war and the fighting.